So here we are in Microsoft Flight Simulator, the default Barton Aerodrome. That's Echo Golf Charlie Bravo. That's near Manchester in the UK, if you're wondering what aerodrome I'm at. To look at a new add-on aeroplane, and I do mean aeroplane because it actually is for the flight sim, and that's this thing that you can see in front of you, which is the Skypirat JW1, which, as you can see, is a flying wing jetpack. Now, this is from developer Touching Cloud, and it's available at Sim Market, where I think it costs €9, so not very expensive at all. Now, for that money, you get this thing, the little flying jet wingsuit, and you get, I think, 4 paint jobs. The paint jobs, not much difference in the paint jobs. You can see blue highlights on the suit. If you pick different liveries, I think the highlights are different colours, but of course people might repaint this thing. And you also get a 18-page PDF manual. Now, you might be surprised to learn that there is an 18-page PDF manual for this, because, you know, it would appear to be a pretty simple aircraft. However, to actually get this working in the sim, the developer has had to sort of jump through a few hoops, and they are still working on it. And so it mentions some limitations and occasional glitches that it gets in the sim, and how you can sort those out and get around the thing. And then what it does is it explains all the controls, how you fly the thing, how you land the thing, and all the stuff that it can do, because it can do some fun things, not least of which is that when you're flying around, there's a little head-up display. We'll see that in a moment. And what you can do is you can turn on the landing light switch in your sim, and what happens is the head-up display goes into scan mode, and it will search for AI aeroplanes or multiplayer aeroplanes that are flying about, allow you to detect them, and if you fly up close enough to them, what it then does is it links you to the plane. You can land on the wing of it and get in the plane, which is kind of cool. So this thing does more than meets the eye. As you can see, it's kind of a nice model, and it is, believe it or not, based on a real aeroplane. If you look on YouTube and places like that, what you will find is the real thing that's very, very similar to this. It was made by a Swiss guy called Yves Rossi. That's I'll put links in the description for where you can get this, and some links to some videos for the thing. Now, Yves Rossi was a Swiss Air Force pilot, and after he left the Air Force, he was flying for Swiss International Airlines, flew A320, so he's a very experienced pilot, but he's a bit of an adrenaline junkie as well, into skydiving and stuff like that. But he always wanted to fly as much like a bird as possible, and so he developed this thing. And so there really is one of these, and in the sim, this is very, very similar in performance to the real thing that he has. If you look at the real thing, what you'll find is that on the top of the wing, which is on the real thing, is made out of carbon fibre. It has Breitling sponsorship. So you do see this thing at air shows and stuff like that, like Oshkosh and what have you. It was flying in formation with a flying fortress at Oshkosh, if I remember rightly. And this in the sim, this thing follows quite closely the real performance of the real thing. So the real thing weighs about 50 pounds, and it has 4 little jet engines on it. Each one delivers about 50 pounds of thrust, and it carries about 8 gallons of fuel, which gives it about 10 minutes of flying. And there are no control surfaces on the wing whatsoever. It's all controlled by the pilot shifting his weight and changing his body position, so he can like arch his back or move his legs out to turn and all this kind of stuff. No control surfaces on it at all. And in the US, where this thing, the real thing, is registered, I think it's November 15 Yankee Romeo, if I remember rightly. If it isn't that, it's something similar to that. And it is registered as a real aircraft. So this is genuinely based on a real aeroplane. Now, performance-wise, the real thing can fly for about 10 minutes, and how the real thing launches is Yves Rossi either hangs onto the open door of a helicopter with his feet on the landing skids, gets up to altitude, starts the engines, then he backflips off the helicopter, goes into a ballistic drop, and then when he's got enough airspeed, he pulls up and flies around with the thing for 10 minutes. And the only control that he has, actually, as in controlling things, is he has a throttle cable linked to a couple of fingers on his right hand. Everything else is weight shift. And this thing flies around for about 10 minutes. What Rossi does on the real thing is he has a wristwatch with a timer on it, and when he gets to about 9 minutes and 30 seconds, he knows he's not far off running out of fuel, so he sets himself up with a reasonable amount of altitude. He lets the jets run out of fuel, it pulls up a little bit to slow the speed down, and then he deploys a parachute, and that's how he lands the thing. So the real thing doesn't launch from the ground as we are here. It launches off an aircraft, but you could do that in the sim if you wanted to. And then what it actually does is, when he deploys a parachute, the wing sort of drops away a little bit off his back, and a parachute deploys, and he actually has two parachutes. He's got a reserve parachute just in case he has problems with the main parachute, and he parachutes down. But he will only do that if he's got like about 15 knots of wind, because apparently that makes it a little bit easier to land when he's going forward a little bit and he's sort of into the wind and what have you. But we're a little bit different in the sim. What we have and how Touching Cloud have developed this, which is amazingly clever how they've gone about it, is there are 4 modes of flight that this can do in the sim, and they are all controlled by your flap controls, i.e. lowering the flaps or increasing the flaps toggles through 4 flight modes. I'll switch to the head-up display and you'll be able to see one of those. So here we are looking at the head-up display, and it's pretty simple. Across the top you've got compass heading. To the left you can see the RPM gauge for the throttle setting. You can see how much fuel we've got 80%. Over on the left hand side there is an airspeed indicator tape, and over on the right hand side there is an altimeter which is reading the altitude of the field at the moment. Now down below that what you can see is a little tracking box, and that's the one where if you hit the landing light key it will track aircraft, and you can actually navigate up to the AI aircraft, and when you get close enough to them it magnetically links to the aircraft, and you can kind of land on the doorway of the aircraft and get in the aircraft. So that's how you could launch from the air if you wanted to. And the last thing that you can see on here is a little box on the right hand side which says stable. That's one of the 4 flight modes that this thing has. There, as I say, there are 4. There is stable. If I hit the increase flaps button in the sim, it will switch to hover. So stable will enable me to take off, and we'll do that in a moment or two. Hover puts it into a mode where on about 50% throttle it will try and keep you about 10 meters off the ground, so you can kind of like scoot about hovering 10 meters off the ground. If you hit the flaps again, you can go into cruise mode, or if you get up to a reasonable airspeed, and we'll see that in a minute, it will automatically go into cruise mode where you can fly around at about 200-220 miles per hour. And then if you hit the flaps button again, make sure that you've slowed down to do that. That's the last mode where it will deploy the parachute so that you can come in for a landing. Now a little bit more about that tracking mode. When you hit the landing light key in the sim, it starts looking about for AI aircraft, and so you'll be able to navigate towards them. And as I say, when you get close enough to them you can kind of link up with them and get on the plane and what have you, which is kind of fun, and it does work. The PDF, 18 pages, goes through all this stuff, and it explains some of the limitations and how the thing can occasionally glitch in the sim, meaning that you might have to restart your flight to sort it out. For example, you can fall over and it can be a little bit difficult to get up when you're on the ground. It is possible to get up, but sometimes you might have to restart the sim. Worth noting here that if you look up at up at there, you can see RPM 20 and fuel 76, so it's counting down the fuel at the moment. If we have a look up here, you can see that that's full fuel, 10 gallons. The real aeroplane is about 8 gallons. The real aeroplane weighs about 50 pounds for the wing that's attached and the jet engines, and each of the 4 jet engines has about 50 pounds of thrust. So overall it's about 200 pounds of thrust, which would probably not be enough for it to take off from the ground, which is why it launches from a helicopter. But in the sim we can launch from the ground, as you'll see. So about 50 pounds for the wing, and 8 gallons of fuel or 10 gallons of fuel. You can see how fast that's counting down there, and that's it. Now one other thing just before we fly, there's the external view, as you can see, and if I switch it to the internal view we get this head-up display, but this is not the default view. The default view when you go to the internal cockpit is from slightly behind the pilot's helmet with the head-up display in front of him, and the sort of helmet gets in the way a little bit. So if you get this thing and you want to get this view, and this is the more useful view for flying around, what you will need to do is you will need to go on your camera, and what you'll need to do is you'll need to turn on Smart Cam, and then what you'll need to do is you'll need to look at the pilot Smart Cam targets and choose close. That's the view that I've got on here. So if you're wondering how I got this view, smart cam turned on, pilot, click on that, select that closed view, and that's the view that you'll get, and you'll probably find that that's a little bit more useful. So without further ado, let's get this thing in the air. Now I'll do it from the external view because it's kind of cool. So let's go. Throttling up. Now the other thing that you can hear there is the glider variometer. It's beeping because I'm climbing, but what it will do is if I start descending, it'll start going with a steady tone. So we'll go on this camera view, and you'll see I'm still in stable mode, but what I'm doing is I'm pitching forward there, and it's automatically gone into cruise mode there. And now we are merrily flying around. Now I'm rolling the aileron control, I'm moving my stick, which is replicating sort of like, I guess, sticking his arm out or his leg out to turn the thing. The rudder control in my sim does actually work, but I'm not tending to use it very much. So this is cruise mode, and we'll give it some, shall we? So I'm pitching down to get some speed up. In the real thing, Ibrossi tends to fly around on 80% throttle. I'm on 100% throttle here, so you know, I'll back the thing off a little bit, and I'll get this thing down to low altitude, because obviously we want to whiz about in the sim. Believe it or not, I did actually manage to fly under that bridge messing around with this thing. Now you might find that what you need to do is sort of change the view a little bit to get your hood to be sort of level or what have you. You might have to kind of mess around with that a little bit. I'm using the right mouse button for that. But what we can see from this is that flying around in this thing at low level is really a sort of amazing experience, and great for exploring stuff. Don't crash into stuff. So yeah, this is just great fun to fly about in, and it looks good in the air. You can see there, and there I am sort of merrily flying away and what have you, and the thing will do like rolls and loops and stuff like that. There we go, there's a roll. And obviously what you got to do is you got to keep an eye on the fuel level, because if you look up on the head-up display, you can see that I'm 94% fuel. So this thing's using fuel at a pretty rapid rate of knots. So what I'll do is I'll attempt to slow down a little bit. So we're throttling back a bit. And I'm going to get it below 100 knots. Notice that the hood's a little bit difficult to see against the bright sky, which is why I've got that sort of Shift Z add-on up at the top left. So you can see the box around cruise is blinking, meaning that we'd probably be alright to shift modes. So we can shift into stable mode. And we are sinking. And then what I can do is I can hit another flap control, and we go into hover mode again. What that will do is that will eventually take us down to about maybe 5 or 10 meters above the ground. So you can see this thing's coming down and coming down and coming down. One less. I deploy the parachute. There. In which case I can come down on the parachute, and there we go. You know, I've fallen over, but you know, I should be able to get back up. Let's. There we go. I'm just pulling back on the stick, and there we are on the ground. Now back on the head-up display, it's gone into stable mode. So unlike the real thing, we can take off again, and you can hear that vario beeping away like crazy. I go on there and I pitch the nose down a little bit, still in that stable mode, Now it's automatically gone into cruise, and there I am flying around again. And we'll get a bit of speed on and we'll try a loop. Ooh, didn't like that. I would probably have to dive a bit more to get some more speed on. What have you? So let's come back toward the airfield and we'll slow down a little bit, and we'll go into stable mode. And we'll slow down a bit. So we're kind of over the airfield, and then I'll go into hover mode. And as I say, what that will eventually do is it should take me down to about 10 meters of altitude, where I can sort of like whiz over the terrain. I'll just move the altimeter down a little bit. Boom! And if you land too hard, that's what happens, yeah? You damage your landing gear. I'm assuming what that means is you broke your legs. Now, so obviously, you know, you could turn off damage if you wanted to. And then you'd probably be able to land a little bit easier than that. There we go. This is what I was talking about the default view from the cockpit, if you will. You can see that that's, you know, not quite so great. You know, maybe you like that view. I find that a little bit difficult, and so what I do is, as I say, I go on the camera there, I turn on smart camera there, and then what I do is I have a look at these pilot views here, and I go to close, and there you go, there's that head-up display mode there. And if we, just so you can see that hover mode, what I will do is I will put it in hover mode. And that's what we get, and you can sort of like just kind of hover around and what have you. So it is sort of possible to explore in that hover mode if you want to. You can use your sort of stick to pitch forward a little bit and go around like that. So, you know, if you want to explore at low level at relatively low speed, you can do, although obviously you can see there, you could potentially end up sort of clanging into the ground. So it does require a little bit of practice to fly this thing, but it's really, really great fun. And it doesn't take that much to learn how to fly this thing, and then you could be, I don't know, you know, sort of landing on the Burj Khalifa in Dubai and things like that, you know what I mean? And obviously it's really, really good fun. And yeah, what I can do is if I put this in stable mode and then throttle down, I was able to get this thing on the ground. So unlike the real thing, unlike Ebros's wing jet thing, we can actually land if we want to, which means that this might possibly be the ultimate VFR Explorer. And of course, what you've seen there is one of the great things about it is when you're on that head-up display mode and you're flying around at low level with no cockpit in front of you, it really does seem like you're going incredibly fast. So, as I say, I'll put links in the description for this thing, and some links to videos on YouTube of the real thing. So that you can see how nice this thing is. But yeah, that's it. The Touching Cloud JW1 Skypirat, about €9 from Sim Market, and that's it. You've seen what it does. Do I recommend it? Absolutely. This will put a smile on your face, and it is really fun, and it's a bit of a challenge to learn how to fly it. And I think the developers have done a remarkable job on this, of getting something that is, you know, kind of complex and the sim's not really designed to have, and making it relatively easy to fly. As I say, your normal throttle control, your normal, you know, ailerons and elevator controls, and then just 4 flap controls. Increase the flaps or decrease the flaps to switch through those 4 modes. The only thing that I've spotted on it is that when you saw the parachute deploy, and I will show you that, I'll just go on there we are, we're in stable mode. I'll get the thing up at height, and I'll show you the only thing that I've actually discovered on it which needs a bit of a tweak. So I'll get a bit of height up like that, and then what I'll do is I'll deploy the parachute. So 1 click on the flaps, another click on the flaps, and we're on the chute. Yeah. And if we actually look at the chute, you can see there that it appears to be, unless that is deliberate, it appears to be an untextured, the sort of the lines on the parachute appear to be untextured. They've got that little static pattern on them and what have you. And other than that, that's about the only thing that I could complain about. There we go. Look at that, textbook. So you know, and that is being really picky that it's got, but it is literally the only fault I could find with the thing. As I say, the PDF does point out some limitations of the thing, but you've seen that I've managed to do this video all in one go with no problems and what have you, so it's not that bad, and obviously they're going to work on it and tweak it a little bit. So that's it for this one from Chock's Hangar. Quick shots, the JW1 Skypirat Flying Jetwing pack from Touching Cloud developers.